Hello everyone, I've had a few emails and messages from folks that are still puzzled about helicopters in Microsoft Flight Simulator. So in this video I will telling you where we are, what is possible to do nowadays, and what the goal seems to be. I promise some of you will be surprised with some of the stuff I have to tell you, because it is possible to have great helicopters in Microsoft Flight Simulator right now. I apologize if this question has previously been answered, as it seems to be very basic, but what's the difference between native support for helicopters in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020, which I realize is not expected until the fall of 2022, and the currently available third-party helicopter models that apparently can already be used in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020? Are they just less realistic to the lack of true rotor aerodynamic model in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020? There's something I'd like to address right now that hopefully will clear some waters here. The first thing people tend to say when someone asks about helicopters in Microsoft Flight Simulator is that it is not possible at all to have good helicopter flight dynamics in the sim. And that is simply not true. It is possible to have good flight dynamics in the sim, even if it does not support helicopters natively. If you are wondering how this is possible, please bear with me as I let you know exactly what developers can do right now in Microsoft Flight Simulator to get great helicopters. Let's imagine this blue box represents Microsoft Flight Simulator. Inside that box we have several models, algorithms and pieces of software that can take care of different things. Some will take care of weather, for example, or ATC, or flight dynamics. And of course we also have aircraft added into the sim. The native flight dynamics portion of the sim takes care of everything an aircraft can or cannot do, how it is affected by forces, etc, etc. This is what happens for all aircraft, be it general aviation, airliner, it doesn't matter. The native flight dynamics portion of the code, along with all the setting developers had to their aircraft, are the bosses, and together they make aircraft fly the way they do. Now, if you have been around and paying attention to news that we have been putting out in the past, you know that Fred Nahr, a fellow simmer, has created a module that is called HTR, or Helicopter Total Realism. Most recently, Fred released a new version and renamed it to MSFS. MSFS is an external module, an external piece of software. It runs on its own outside of Microsoft Flight Simulator, but it communicates with the sim, getting information from and sending information into Microsoft Flight Simulator. This external module is injecting flight dynamics into the sim, controlling aircraft, and it does that by overriding the native flight dynamics. You can try some aircraft using MSFS, such as RotorSim Pilot R44. There are others out there that you can find on websites such as flightsim.to, for example. Fred has done a terrific job with his flight dynamics library, and the helicopters that use it fly really well. Of course, how well they fly doesn't depend solely on Fred's software, but also on the way helicopter developers set things up for MSFS to kick in and do its thing. Just like having great native flight dynamics in Microsoft Flight Simulator on its own doesn't do the whole job. Developers play a huge part in having their aircraft behave the way they should. Just a quick side note, please help us grow here on YouTube by liking and commenting on this video. Doing that will tell the YouTube algorithms to show it to other simmers as well, expanding our reach and getting more simmers to know about HeliSimmer and helicopter flight simulation. Thank you very much for doing that. Now here's where things get really interesting and really exciting. You see, we are not dependent on having an external piece of software such as MSFS to get great flight dynamics in the sim. And we are also not dependent on getting native flight dynamics to cover helicopters. Because there's a way for developers to add great flight dynamics to their helicopters in Microsoft Flight Simulator from within the sim right now and without needing an external piece of software. We already saw that we have a native flight dynamics engine inside Microsoft Flight Simulator, and we also saw that it is possible to have an external piece of software overriding those flight dynamics and doing its own thing. What a lot of people don't realize is that there is an internal plugin system called WASM, or WebAssembly, which is a piece of technology that comes from web development. WebAssembly, abbreviated WASM, is a binary instruction format for a stack-based virtual machine. WASM is designed as a portable compilation target for programming languages, enabling deployment on the web for client and server applications. Now, tech stuff aside, through WASM or WebAssembly, developers can add their own codes into Microsoft Flight Simulator. They can make their own flight dynamics from scratch and override the native flight dynamics of the sim, which is exactly what teams such as High Performance Group has been doing. How good these flight dynamics are, it depends on how good the coder is and how well that coder can write those flight dynamics. But what's important here, and the truth is, that it is possible to have good helicopter flight dynamics in Microsoft Flight Simulator even before Microsoft releases helicopter support. Native helicopter support will be a huge help since a lot of the heavy lifting will be done by Microsoft and/or Azobo's code, but even then, it should be possible to improve or change the flight dynamics through WASM, through the plugin system. So to recap, it is possible to inject flight dynamics from an external piece of software such as MSFS, which I know a lot of people are not fans, but it is also possible to inject flight dynamics from within Microsoft Flight Simulator by developing a WASM or WebAssembly plugin. And even after Microsoft releases native support for helicopters, it will always be possible to improve that and make better helicopters. At least it should be possible if nothing changes, and honestly, I don't expect anything to change really. But just like right now, good flight dynamics will always depend on the developer. It's possible to do a good job with the tools we have this moment. Developers just need to both want to and have the skills to do it. So when you hear someone say that a given helicopter in Microsoft Flight Simulator is really not that good because of the lack of native support on the sim, it's really not true. If a developer added a helicopter into Microsoft Flight Simulator, he knows what to do, so you should be able to do a good job. And hopefully this will help us get better helicopters in the future. You can check out my other video where I talk about everything we know about native helicopter support in Microsoft Flight Simulator, or perhaps these 4 exercises plus 1 bonus to improve your helicopter skills. I hope I help you understand all this helicopter situation in Microsoft Flight Simulator. I will be seeing you all in the next video. Until then, take care and fly safe.